Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and thank you very much for watching. Doing these videos is a heck of a lot of fun and we really love bringing you our love for all these different classic cars. And you can kind of see a Piercero, a 1933 Piercero V12 LeBaron convertible coupe lurking in the background. We'll be bringing you that restoration too. But in this one, we're going to be talking about paint body work on the 66A, and we're going to do a little bit of the chassis work too. And then in the final episode on this truck, we're going to have it all done. We're going to have it out driving, and you guys can judge whether we did a good job or not. So without further ado, let's get to work. Well, the first thing I had to do is take it apart, which is no big deal, but this box is just really difficult to handle. I put a couple eye bolts where the chains hook on to the back of the box there, but on the front there's no way to grab a hold of it, so all I could do is sling it with this long sling, use the reach forklift, and maneuver it around that way. I'll show you how I handled it later on when it was all painted and done. Well, I got all the sheet metal, the hood, the cab, the doors, the box, the tailgate, and all that stripped in a conventional method. They plastic blast them first, and then they go over it with sand wherever there's rust. I didn't strip the fenders because they were absolutely perfect. And I don't know, maybe they're new old stock, but I had never seen as nice a set of fenders as this truck had. So nothing to do there, nothing really to show. I just sanded them down and I reshot them, so no big deal there. The cab was in really pretty good shape. The back of the cab had a few little dings in it. I had some holes here and there, both in the back of the cab and the little corner of the cab. And I had a hole, rust-through hole in the right cowl panel. But my biggest problem was the left cowl panel. And it looked like to me that whoever did this body work before just took a hammer and beat this thing in and then filled it over with lead. Very bad idea. If moisture gets to the back side of the lead, it just starts rusting and it's all going to come off. And that's pretty much what it was doing. So I melted the lead out, revealed all the sins, and it's not that big a deal. You just take and cut it out, and then you make a new panel and you weld it in. So no big deal. But when I got this all cut out, I had a lot of rust behind there, so I took my spot blaster and I blasted all that clean, and I welded up the area that had rotted through on the inside structural member. Then I painted everything, and then I welded in my new panel. Not any real big deal. Pretty easy, actually. And the rest of the cab was really good as far as rust and that concerned, but the hardest thing to work in this entire cab was the pan underneath the seat. You know, tools and all that kind of stuff bounce around in there, and this pan was just beat to heck, and I didn't want to take it out to work it. I wanted to leave it in there because I like the waffle, original factory waffle rivets and all that. So that just took me like a day to work all those dents out of there and make it look like brand new. So I got the cab all done. I had to work the firewall too. They had welded up some holes in it and not done a very good job, so I had to straighten all that out. And then I had everything so good on this cab, I didn't even need to use any lead anywhere. I just gave it a little skim coat of Bondo, and heck, we were in the paint booth putting primer on this thing. Maybe some of you aficionados will pick up the twisted paper cord in the cowl welt here. And we have two mixing banks here at Restore Cars. We have both BASF Glasurit and PPG Concept and Deltron. And in this truck I put single stage PPG Concept on everything. I have a hard time with dark blue colors, and we painted this truck Washington blue, pretty dark color. In the Glasurit world, I just don't have enough toners in the single stage world to mix dark colors very well, and particularly blue. So I usually end up over on the PPG side for dark blues. On these Model A's, and for the most part, most even the classics were concerned, we're using sort of a satin semi-gloss on anywhere where they wouldn't have sanded and polished. So the door jambs, the firewall both sides, underneath the gas tank, the back of the cab on the inside, below the belt rail of the cab outside. All of this I shot with I got my special little formula, semi-gloss, and then I just sand and polish the areas that were maybe sanded and polished on them originally. Of course, all of the commercial vehicles at Ford were not sanded and polished at the factory. They all just left in blank lacquer. If any sanding and polishing was to be done, the dealer did it. So I figured a Deluxe pickup, I figured the dealer did it, and it looks a lot better. So I sanded and polished those areas. The box was another story. This truck came from Rochester, New York, so obviously there's going to be rust in it. And I got a little lazy on the box. I did not want to remove the wood. It's just a huge job, and pulling all the nails on the inside was going to hurt the metal even more. So I decided to work this thing solely from the outside, which meant I couldn't hammer weld. So I did things a little bit differently on this box than I would normally do, but it still worked out really well. Well, you can see the spots here coming through the lead, and so you know there's something underneath there that is bad. So all you can do is melt all this lead out there and find out what kind of sins are underneath. And boy, there was a lot of sins. But there's nothing you can do except cut all this mess out of there, make new panels, weld them in like they're supposed to be, and hopefully, if you do it well enough, you don't even have to put any lead on it. First things first is get rid of all of this mess that somebody welded in here, and then use that piece that I take off as a pattern, and I'll just make a new one. The only challenge to this piece is you have to do a 90-degree bend on a curve. So the tool of choice of that day was the tipping wheel. And then I just finish it off with some hand hammering on any anvil I can find that will suit my needs at the moment. What I did is I had to step this panel, because remember I can't hammer weld it because I can't get to the back side, so I have to do a step in it, then cleco these in sometimes not, and then weld it solid. It has to be welded all the way across. Every seam has to be welded 100%. And if you don't, guess what? You'll have the same mess that I had when I stripped the lead off this car. It will rust from the inside out. I did pretty much the same thing to the tail end of this truck on the driver's side as I did to the front side, except for I was able to save the curved portion up front there, at least for now. And I put a step in it, which I had to do because remember I can't get to the backside to hammer on it, to hammer weld it out. And when you weld, guess what happens? It shrinks, so then you have to hammer on it somehow. Well, I had to keep it straight. So when you put that step in there, that really helps you out. And if you're really patient, go slow, keep it as cool as you can, you'll keep it straight. And then there's a lip on the bottom, and I punched holes in that so that the nails go right up in there. It looks exactly original on the bottom side too. So I was really patient welding this all together, and I didn't have to even use lead except for one little spot in the front. And the rest of it stayed nice and straight. I didn't have to put any lead on it. I gave it a little skim coat of putty and blocked it, and off to the paint booth we went. Just one note about priming is that manufacturers of this paint want us to put down epoxy primer first, and then they want us to do any filler work we do on top of that, and then they want us to seal that again with epoxy primer, then they want us to put primer surfacer on top of it, and then they want a sealer, and then finally your top coat. Okay, we did it. You know what the problem with that is when you get too much buildup of primer where the belt rails are on these cars, you get double the amount of paint in the bottom or in the crevice of those, and what happens is in a few years down the road it starts bubbling and coming up. So if you do it that way, you've got to cut down 90% of that primer each and every step all the way back down, or you'll have trouble. We went back to the old way. If we have to do any filler, we do it on top of the metal. We do one coat, maybe two of epoxy. We put 3 or 4 coats of primer on there. We block that, and usually we're done. If we have to spot prime or do a little bit more, we'll do that. But it saves a lot of labor, and the other thing is it's not going to be bubbling later on down the road. So it's a big plus. Well, here we are with the chassis pretty much ready to receive the body. We've got, of course, the engine, transmission, everything in there. We can lift the body up high enough to get it over the steering column. It's not a problem. And you guys can be the judge and tell us whether you think it's good or not. The nice thing about a Model A is it's so simple. If you had all the parts and pieces, that's the hard part of collecting up all this original stuff. If you had all that, you could literally assemble a chassis in less than a week. They're very simple and straightforward. And also, a Model A is a significant piece of American history. I was standing outside a gentleman's house in Mission Viejo, California, and admiring a 1930 Model A town car. And his name was General William Lyons. He had a spectacular collection. And he told me that every great collection has at least one Model A because it's such great historical significance. So you guys can be the judge whether I did a good job or a bad job. I ran everything past the judging standards. I happen to have a beautiful original radiator. I mean, it was absolutely perfect. We bought new old stock radiator hoses. We bought a whole set of dill valve stems. Every goodie that I could get, original wiring wherever I could get it. The main harness I had to have made, but I had it made exactly like the original harness that came out of this truck. As far as the finishes are concerned, you know, kind of flat black on the frame, tried to stab that right on. I got the semi-gloss, or a little less than semi-gloss satin, more on the front end, the rear end, the other parts. We've got the Ford script battery in here, and also, by the way, I'm making the correct battery caps, so when they go up there and the judges feel that, those letters in Ford script will be raised instead of lowered on the reproductions. Every finish should be correct on this. If a nut was plain, we did it plain. We had to replace virtually every part except for the frame on this thing, and it was because of all of this original detail that I didn't want to lose that whole thing about the history. So a lot of the internal parts were so nice on this, like all the gears and everything inside the transmission were so nice I kept them. Same goes for the ring and pinion. The axles were beautiful, all that, but I replaced all the outside stuff mainly because they ruined it. There is one thing that I stepped aside on, and that's I put cast iron brake drums on it. I figured my life and whoever's riding me his life is more important than any kind of an award. And I probably will never show this thing anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but I will say this, it is a smart move to put cast iron drums on these things. They really stop nice when you do that. So we'll let you guys be the judge. Did we do well? Did we do poorly? I always read your comments, so tell us where we went wrong. Well, thanks for watching, guys. In our next episode, we're going to be putting this thing together, final assembly, going to get it out on the road. We'll talk a little bit about upholstery, a little bit about my pinstriping. I'm not a pinstriper, but with a little help from a friend, I got it done. And we'll see if we did well.